Welcome back to the channel, folks, and this video is going to be a little different in two ways, and unless you're more than a little short-sighted, you've probably spotted the first difference already. Yes, I have indeed changed my VR recording setup. Bullet for My Enemy had a very detailed comment on my last video about the different methods he's tested for VR recording, and his conclusion was that recording directly from the headset isn't the way to go, especially if you're using any sort of foveated rendering. His recommendation was to record from the track file replay afterwards, and ultimately he's right on that. I was trying different settings in the headset and they were making minor improvements to the visual quality at best while compromising my in-game experience by reducing performance.
You are cleared for takeoff when ready. Climb 300 at QS.
I think the reason I've resisted this approach with the track files so far was that initially I started by just recording some cool moments in-game to share with a few friends. Then I started putting them up on YouTube, and as I got comments and questions, I started annotating with text what was going on, but that quickly felt limiting, so I graduated to voiceovers, which I honestly enjoy as a way of reflecting myself on what happened in-game. But at that point, I'm essentially doing full content production rather than just sharing ad hoc clips. So I really should focus on making them as good as possible in terms of visual quality and production standards. In case anyone else is thinking about doing this approach with recording the track file replay, there's a few things to keep in mind. It does take more time since you have to literally play back everything you want to record in the replay, but it doesn't necessarily take a lot more effort, as you can start the recording, check that the FOV zoom is all set, and then you can walk away and check back in 20 to 30 minutes, and by that time your flight should be done. I've also heard that it helps to keep the track files small, so that means disconnecting and reconnecting from the server periodically, ideally every time you slot into a new plane. The reason for this is it means that you can pick and choose with a bit more granularity which parts of your session you want to record. And also in the past, large track files had a habit of desyncing the longer the playback session went on. And I think the situation is better these days, but probably still a good idea to play it safe and keep the size of the track replays down. Now, the other thing that's going to be a little different about this video is you're going to see me getting shot down quite a lot. I don't tend to show that in my videos, but it happens a lot, and I thought, why not show it? I needed to do some 4K content just to get used to producing it, so I thought I'd share the first session I did rather than cherry pick something where I do amazingly well. So with all that out of the way, let's get into the video proper. So in this first flight, I'm obviously in a frog foot. I'm with Franco and we're looking for some EWRs that have been marked up on the F10 map just west of our airfield at S.A.L.S.A. The text was ambiguous, it just said nice EWR, could have been friendly, could have been hostile, but we had to check it out. However, there is an F5 and an F-A10 that keep popping in and out of EWR about 10 miles away. Rene is just to the west on the coast and it's blue, although the HQ is down, so they can't spawn fighters there. Nevertheless, we need to be vigilant. Once we confirm there's no EWRs at the marked spot, we decide to go look for the F5 and the A10. Franco initially tells me to look for the A10 while he deals with the F5, but I judge the F5 to be a greater threat and also turn to look for him. I'm sure this F5 is dipping in and out of the valleys in the mountainous terrain, so I've got to be careful and keep my head on a swivel. Luckily, as I'm scanning, I spot him coming out of a valley. He also sees me and we turn into each other, but as we're going to circle, he's never going to beat a froggy, so I easily outrate him and start to get nose on. Looks like it's lining up for a gunshot. I get more than a few rounds off, but I really should do better, but I'm very rusty in the froggy because of all the Era 4 missions. Luckily for me, he reverses in front of me for some reason, so it should line up nicely. I take a very long time getting tone, but eventually I get tone and Fox 2, And after a minute, Franco fires as well, but luckily my missile gets there first and splash F5. I hate the fact that Russian missiles don't uncage like the Western NATO ones do. It makes it much harder to get them off because you have to get the pipper on and hold it while you get tone and release the missile, whereas in a Western plane you can just uncage and it will track the target. I can then see on EWR that the A-10 is very, very close, so immediately I turn and start looking for him. My thought at the time was that he was also low in the valleys and looking for me, but as you can see from the TAC view, he had me in sight the whole time and in fact was even shooting at me without me realizing it. In fact, in the replay, I heard his gun a few times, which I didn't hear at the time in the cockpit. Just as I spot him, he lands some shots on me. I immediately go into a spiral climb, which is usually the play against A-10s, but he pulls his nose pretty aggressively onto me, indicating that he's almost certainly dropped his stores or might even be low on fuels. And then my plane doesn't climb as well as it should. His shots may have damaged an engine or a wing or something. I couldn't take my eyes off him to check, and whatever it is, eventually he landed more shots and I go down for the first time. So frustrating, but it proves the old adage about the first person to get tally usually wins the fight. So after that, I decided the area is pretty hot with blue fighters, so spawn again at Al-Husseir, but this time in a Mirage F1. By the way, one thing I'm still trying to figure out with the recordings is how much motion smoothing to apply. For this video, I've opted for little to no smoothing. My feeling is the shakiness is okay for the most part. I feel that when I'm looking in the forward 90 or so degree quadrant, it's manageable and feels like first person footage, you know, GoPro on a helmet type footage versus the more stable, typical track IR footage that we see. It seems to be worst when I'm looking around or behind me in a turn where I think the micro neck movements kind of make it a bit shaky. And I also feel like the frog foot seems worse for head shake for some reason as compared to the Mirage F1. Also, if I apply motion smoothing, then what happens is while the center of the cockpit gets more stable, the EWR reports in the top right corner get very shaky as it's compensating for the movement. So I feel like it's okay as is, but feel free to give me your thoughts on whether I need to apply more motion smoothing or less, or what you think.
Great.
Once I was up with Franco, we were looking for a couple of F4s to the west of Al-Husseir. Unfortunately, Franco was a little ahead of me and got shot down, and again, unbeknownst to me, I was very close to at least one F4 and an F5, which I had no clue about.
Great.
Eventually, I spotted a second F4, pulled him into my sights, missed the opportunity for a missile shot, and went for a snap gunshot. But as I was turning to follow him, his wingman got me. Probably more frustrating than the first death because I didn't even get a kill on this flight. For the next flight, Franco, Mav and I all decided to take off at the same time to maximize our chances, since clearly the F4s were, if not working together, then at least flying close enough to be able to support each other. And they were almost on top of Al-Husseir, literally 5 to 10 miles to the west of the airfield, so we were getting pushed back further and further over our airfield. Once up, we head west-northwest to what looks like 3 bandits. I can see one of them on my radar and manage to lock him up at about 5 miles out. I wait a little before firing to see if he's going to fire a 9 Lima at me, which I have to defend. When I do eventually fire, he's actually beaming me a little, which means that the missile has to pull quite a lot of lead, but the 530Fs have a very strong motor, and eventually the missile arrives and splash F4. I know that there's probably 2 more F4s in the area, so I stay low, stay fast, trying to keep looking for them, but one of them gets me shortly afterwards and I'm down. At least I got a kill this time, but still not feeling too great about it. Things somehow got even worse on the next flight, where GCI vectored me onto an Apache. I eventually found him, waited too long to fire a missile because I wanted to be sure it wasn't a friendly heli. Instead, dithered, tried gunning him, missed, and ended up clipping him, killing both of us. Not a very proud moment at all, and I did apologize to him on chat. I almost called it quits after that for the session, but then the blue numbers seemed to be thinning out a bit, and from our side Franco decided to call it day, so I thought I'll do one more flight on my own, and I decided to go hunt down an F4 on EWR to the northwest. This guy was flying high for some reason, so my plan was to stay low and perform a giraffe pop-up attack. Unfortunately, for some reason, I was having trouble even picking him up on radar, despite the fact that he was flying high, and normally those targets are easy to pick up and track on radar. I was finally able to get a lock on him when he was about 11 miles away, but I didn't initiate a climb just yet. I wanted to wait till I was a little bit closer to reduce the chances of him being able to fire a Sparrow back at me. Eventually, I pull the nose up and start climbing towards him. The missile has tone all this time and I had the green circle. It looks like everything's in parameters for another 530 shot, and sure enough, I fire Fox 1, but instead of a repeat of my earlier kill, the lock drops for some reason. I do manage to get the lock back, but the missile is dumb at this point, so now I decide to follow him down. I think I switched to my Magic 2s, but I wasn't sure if the angle would be good and whether he would drop flares or not. I decide to follow him up, and now you can hear the AOA alarm going, which means I'm in danger because that means adverse yaw is coming. Because I've got altitude, I keep pulling him into the HUD for the gunshot, and I managed to land some hits. At first I think he's going down, but then it looks like he's just departed, and I have to keep following him. I'm not very aggressive here. I could have gone inverted and rolled over the top of him, but because of the adverse yaw, I was worried about flying into the ground when I tried to recover, so as a result, he's able to extend away from me. In a different era with worse missiles, he might have been able to get away, but I'm fairly confident about the magics, and sure enough, I get tone and Fox 2 splash F4. So that last kill was a nice way to finish the session. Afterwards, I realized the server is going to reset in 3 minutes and I really want to bank the points, so I plug in the burners and try to race back to S.A.L.S.A to land. I'll leave the landing in at the end so you can see me perform probably the fastest break and turn to final I've ever done, and surprisingly I only slightly overshot the center line. Managed to recover to a decent landing, but the server reset just as I was finishing my rollout before the points were allocated. But overall, I hope you guys like the new recording setup. I still plan to try to do a MiG-29 session before the era changes, so hopefully that will be the next video I'll have for you guys. Thanks, and if you have any comments, suggestions, feel free to share them with me. See you in the next video, guys.